think we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, welcome everyone. If you just joined us, my name is Sade. I'm the Director of Just Communities. And today we are going to talk about one of the most transformative initiatives that I have seen come out of the city of Atlanta. That is the Azalea Market. It's a public-private partnership that is really expanding access to affordable groceries for folks in the downtown area of Atlanta, folks on the south side of Atlanta. So very exciting. I'm going to do a little presentation on who Just Communities is. We do have, hopefully, we will have, I think she's on her way, one of the chief implementers of that strategy. So I'll do my little spiel and then we'll jump into the conversation. If you are new to Just Communities, welcome. Um, Just Communities was previously Eco Districts. Eco Districts, it was an international standard for equitable and regenerative community development. If you're familiar with LEED, it was loosely modeled after LEED. So LEED had an accreditation program for professionals. Eco districts also had an accreditation program for professionals. Of course, LEED certifies buildings for their green building standards, and eco districts also has a certification, but it was at the district level, hence the name eco districts, but also certifying for sustainability standards. And then the Partnership for Southern Equity, for those of you that don't know, we are a long-standing, multifaceted racial justice organization for the South. We have done a whole lot of work around many issues that touch on land and development. And so we acquired eco districts in 2021 because we wanted to focus those efforts more. And we combined the eco district standards and model with PSC's critical analysis about race and land, and we created Just Communities. We created Just Communities because we believe that land has been weaponized in this country really since the first day of our founding. It's been used as a very powerful tool of injustice. Our call to action is to make it be a tool for justice, to actually help communities solve for a lot of the disparities that we see between our neighborhoods, solve for a lot of the environmental calamities that we're seeing more frequently. Okay, you can go to the next slide, Xavier. And so the main way that we help communities, oh, actually, sorry, never mind. I'm going to first share our values. So I always like to start our conversations by grounding us in our values. We like to say that Just Communities is a bold reimagining of how communities grow. We value radical truth and understanding of history, healing and liberation, honoring the wisdom and power of communities, racial equity as the superior growth model, a just climate transition, and policies that reform, repair, and reconcile past harms. Okay, next slide. And this is the slide that I thought I was getting to. The main way that we help communities is with this tool. This is the primary tool that we use. It is the Just Communities protocol. So if you are in an industry that is related to development, or you are just an individual that is concerned about the way that your community is growing, or you have concerns about a specific development project, you can use this tool to make sure that racial equity measures are incorporated into that project or into, say, your city's comprehensive plan, if that's the case, as well as climate resilience measures. So again, the two pillars of our model are racial equity and climate resilience. We break that down into 5 areas: belonging, opportunity, health and wellness, mobility, and I'm sorry, I should have worn glasses. I'm having a hard time seeing. Environment. We ask communities to make 22 commitments that are organized by those 5 areas. And then we recommend 17 actions that you can take to operationalize those commitments that you've made. And we organize those actions into these four phases of groundwork, governance, roadmap, and implementation. So that's our model. Next slide. Right now, there are two primary ways that we are spreading the gospel of just communities. The first way is we want to normalize our standards for development in all of the industries that touch the development process. So if you are an architect, an urban planner, a builder, a developer, etc., landscape architect, designer, community organizer, you can take this accredited practitioners program that is going to give you a deep understanding of our model so that you can use it in your work every day. Or if you are a community advocate, you can use it in your advocacy every day. It is an 8-hour course, so doesn't require too much of a time commitment. You can take it on your own time at your own pace. The asynchronous version is available for purchase on our website. You can also take the live course and learn from me and a lot of other faculty, which is a lot of fun. We have one coming up on April 7th and 8th. Again, it's just 8 hours. The live course we break up into 2 days, so you get to spend 2 afternoons with us. And then you take a test that is about an hour. It's an open book test, so you will definitely pass it. And then you will become accredited. You can put a new accreditation after your name and title. Um, and then you can renew your accreditation every 2 years by taking webinars like this or really anything that's related. So that is sort of on the industry side, but we definitely want to spread our gospel beyond industries. We want to take it to our communities. And so the primary way that we're doing that right now is this monthly webinar series that is open to the public. It's free. At the end of the day, changing our industry standards only matters if it changes our lives. So we want to make sure that folks in our community really understand these issues as well. And so our webinars are the primary way that we are advocating for changes in how development happens and how land is used. A quick plug for our speaker next month, Yamini Nagam, is with the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy, which, for those of you that are not familiar, is probably the foremost research institute that focuses on land use. And she's going to talk to us about land value capture, which sounds very wonky, but it's just a strategy, a public financing strategy that allows governments to really capture the future value of the investments that they're making today in, whether it's public infrastructure, transit, etc. So if any of that interests you, please come back next month. And I think we can now go to the next slide. And I think that is it for my presentation. So now we can get into our speaker for today. Give me 1 minute. I just want to make sure that she is actually with us. I will be right back. All right, so we have her here. Our speaker today is Katie Mola. She is the Deputy Chief of Staff for Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens. I am going to read her bio really quickly. Fueled by conviction that our system should value and honor the dignity of all people, Katie spent several years in the nonprofit consulting sector before transitioning to public service. Prior to her time at the city, she received a Master of Public Policy degree from Georgetown University, Go Hoyas. And while there, she served as a staffer to Senator Ossoff on his judiciary team. And now she serves on the boards of the historic Atlanta Municipal Market and lives in Atlanta with her husband. Welcome, Katie.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, so everybody loves food, so I love this topic. And I know you've been getting a lot of attention for this project, so tell us how you did it.
Yeah. Well, hello everyone. It's great to be with you, even though I can't see you. I'm going to share a brief presentation, and then and today, feel free to stop me along the way, or we can do questions at the end. Let
Oh,
me.
yes. I'm sorry. That reminds me. Yes, for I forgot for those of you in the audience, please put your questions in the Q&A. I'll keep an eye out, and if it's relevant to what Katie is presenting on in the moment, I'll ask it in the moment. Otherwise, we will have a discussion afterwards. Okay.
Awesome. And can you all see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. Well, again, hi everyone. It's great to be with you. I'm going to spend a few minutes today talking about what we're up to in Atlanta around food access and how we are working with partners, both in the public and private sector, to close food access gaps. I will just preface all of this to say that I am truly one of many that is working in this space in Atlanta, and I'm part of a very large team. And so I've played a small role, but there are lots of others that are involved. And if I cannot answer your question, I can commit to finding the person who can. So let's get into it. I'm going to give a little bit of background on Atlanta and what our goals are, and then give a deep dive on the Azalea Market, which is our municipally powered grocery store that we recently opened. I'm also going to share a little bit of some other investments we're making in the food space because I think they're worthwhile for folks to hear about. Talk a little bit about what we're going to be up to next, and yeah, leave space for questions. So, Mayor Andre Dickens took office in 2022, and he set a goal for fresh food that all Atlantans would live within a half mile of fresh, affordable food by 2030. Now, all of those words in that sentence, we've taken time to kind of define more clearly what we mean by all of those things. Half mile, for example, we want that to be an accessible half mile. So, are folks able to get there via transit? Atlanta is notoriously somewhat of a car-dependent city, but we do have a lot of transit-dependent riders and folks that need to be able to walk to groceries as well. So really measuring that, and then fresh, affordable food. Sometimes we include high quality. That is, we tend to use the USDA's definition of some of those words, just for consistency. But again, we are kind of constantly refining this even further to get more specific about our goal. You'll see here on the right, this is a map of Atlanta city limits. All of the red areas are the USDA low income, low access tracts, commonly referred to as food deserts. But we have done our own sort of due diligence around mapping, and all of the dots you see there on the screen, the tiny green dots, are traditional grocery stores, or established food retailers, and the blue dots are kind of our newer models that we are supporting. So you'll see there's actually some good overlap actually in our red lila areas that we are actually serving folks with food. We've actually taken it a step further beyond just where they physically are, but are also talking about their trade radii. So, how if a store like a Walmart or a supercenter, those stores tend to have more options for folks and serve a larger, quantity of folks. So those have a larger trade radii versus maybe a farmer's market or something that's not quite as broad or deep in its offerings. And so when we do all of that analysis, we get to about 65% of Atlantans having that accessible half mile of fresh food. So we have a lot of work to do, but we've made a lot of great progress, and mapping and data has been a huge focus actually, and is going to continue to be for us because it's hard to know how you're doing with your investments if you're not measuring them accurately. So we are working on that all the time. So the mayor, he makes this goal. He also begins immediately trying to work with traditional grocers to bring them to those underserved markets, and quite honestly was turned down by a lot of folks. So we went to every major grocer you could think of, and we offered them a whole variety of incentives. Things like, we will build your box for you. We will give you land. We will abate taxes. We will cover your losses. We'll do all of those things even. And they all said no. The grocery market is incredibly a low margin business for those of you who don't know, and it's also very analysis driven of how they make decisions of where to go next. And so they have pretty stringent criteria, and we did, these areas did not meet that criteria despite the incentives we were offering. So the city and his leadership decided that we're going to do it ourselves. And he started with a $6 million allocation from of city funds to do this work. And we allocated that money to our Economic Development Authority here in Atlanta, Invest Atlanta, to distribute those funds. And you can kind of see a breakdown here. A large portion of that went to a grocery loan fund, again, to support grocers moving into these markets. 20% went to something called Food Access Catalyst Grants, which is, I'll share some examples a little bit later, but it's really that kind of gap capital that a lot of folks need to do food access work, and then some, of course, for admin. So let's get into the Azalea market. So this was a concept that was done as a public-private partnership, apologies, between the city, Invest Atlanta, and a private operator. And so we wanted to bring a mid-sized grocery model into these food deserts where, again, we were not having success bringing in established grocers. So what we did is, and this is sort of a timeline here on the right, is we issued a competitive RFP. We're looking for that operator of the store. We selected Savvy Provisions, which is a local independent grocery operator here in Atlanta. They run a lot of kind of neighborhood style markets. They became our private operator of the store. We had some areas identified, but we got really specific about what sites we would make good candidates for this, and we conducted some feasibility around that to hone in on exactly where these stores would go. We landed on two sites. One is in our downtown core, another is along a corridor southwest in the city that has not seen consistent grocery in a long time. And so once those were identified, we brought all of those pieces to the Invest Atlanta board that was holding those funds the city had allocated. And I'll get into it a little bit later, but there was obviously approval of that process. We entered into leases with Savvy as well as with the landlords of those sites. So we don't own the properties ourselves. We are leasees, and we sublease to Savvy to operate the store. Then we've engaged, of course, in the building out of the sites themselves, working with our city teams to do that and getting to opening. So we have opened one already in downtown back in August, and we are planning to open the second one later this fall, again on the kind of southwest side of Atlanta. So this is the downtown store as an example. It wasn't formerly an old Walgreens, so it did kind of have some similar bones, but it needed a full sort of gut and refresh. It is a full, not a full-size grocery store in terms of like a Walmart or a Publix, but it is a nice mid-sized store that has basically everything, your basic needs, including fresh produce and meat and things like that. It also has a second floor that has a fresh cafe area with made to order food, as well as some prepared food you can grab and go. So, like I said, it took a little over a year from issuing the funds to getting the store open. It was about a $6 million investment of public subsidy. That includes capital grants. It also includes loans, as well as different types of funding structures in that. The owner or the operator put equity in the project as well. So the way the agreement works is that, as I said, we are the leasee. They are our subletter. They are responsible, of course, for repaying some of the loans back to us, but they, once there is a profit to be made, will, enjoy those profits. So we chose that model because, quite frankly, we are not in the business of operating a grocery store as a city, and we are not experts in that space. But we thought the private partnership one would, hopefully increase the quality of the product and the consistency of that, especially with their skin in the game. So that is, I think I'm going to move to the next part of this. I don't know if there's questions specifically on this, if we want to stop here.
No, I think we're good. Keep going.
Okay, great. So like I mentioned, I do want to just highlight a few other types of investments that $6 million covered, as well as just other ways we're working in the food space. So, in addition, we started a technical assistance program with IGA, the Independent Grocers Alliance, I think, maybe association. But it was a 20 participant cohort of local independent grocers in Atlanta. And IGA came in to provide a ton of just, yeah, support and best practices for those folks. Most of them were in food deserts, most of them were minority owned, to just get them equipped with the best in class kind of standard operating procedures and programming that they could offer so that those stores can remain competitive. Paired with that, we also offered capital improvement grants through Wells Fargo. So that was similar. Many of those same people received those grants, totaling $750,000 for some basic upgrades like HVAC or electrical or new refrigerators or point of sale systems. And so those coupled together really gave those independent stores a great opportunity to stay competitive both in their pricing, but also in the market as, larger stores come in. And then finally, those food access catalyst grants we awarded to four organizations. One of them's highlighted here, Rataza, that are really kind of providing a new model or a new option in a food desert. So Rataza does pop-up and mobile markets in areas. I'll highlight another in a second, but those were grants that were given to sort of seed the market in some areas where we're not quite ready to either bring in a new grocery store or things like that. Just to highlight one more of those, we have an amazing food bank in Atlanta, the Atlanta Community Food Bank, and they serve hundreds, if not thousands, of food pantries, but they also operate their own. And they have refigured their model to be what they call community food centers, which is more of a grocery store model. And so we were able to give them through that Catalyst grant, $250,000, as well as a TAD grant, which is Georgia's word for TIFs or tax increment financing. We were able to give them $500,000, which is relatively a small amount of money for them to build this new, really amazing food pantry that provides free groceries to 700 families a week. It also took less than a year to do and is now totally self-sustaining because they baked it into their operating model. So I just want to highlight that as a way we were able to come alongside a partner. We didn't have to create anything new. It was a proven model that we were able to just partner with and now is thriving in that community. Um,
I'm
so what are we
gonna,
doing? Yeah, go ahead, Sydney.
sorry, I'm now seeing questions that are relevant to things you've said. So, the first one from Eric says, did you utilize a city-owned property? So you said the property is owned by private entities,
Yeah.
not Sally, but whoever owned Walgreens?
Yep. So
Okay.
Walgreens was leasing as well, and we transferred the lease over. So
Okay.
yeah, we do not own either property.
And you have a ground lease. That's a very important detail.
Yeah.
And then what was the value of that fact? Okay, so yeah, so the city does not own the property. It is a ground lease with the owner. And then has the program explored enabling local providers to have a place to sell their goods? Um, explored enabling local providers to have a place. Oh, well, it sounds like one of your programs, the Catalyst Grant, that's what it's doing. You're giving grants to folks to do pop-ups and different, uh,
Yeah,
like
I,
take
I
their
think
goods.
yeah. Maybe the question might be referring to like within those groceries, within our Azalea stores, our local, growers or producers having the opportunity to showcase themselves. I don't know that that was baked into the agreement. However, we do have the store has taken it upon themselves to have like a Georgia grown section. And so they are doing it on their own accord. Of course, in the
Okay.
future, if we wanted to do that in a deeper way, we could potentially bake it into the lease contracts.
Well, that actually answers kind of Nash's second question, which was about organic, healthy options. So I assume Georgia grown means produce that's grown in Georgia, maybe organic or not.
Yeah, so the stores, I would have to double check this, but I want to say the both azaleas had to be compliant with SNAP, and they also had to provide a certain percentage mix of fresh and shelf, like I forget there's a USDA word for that, but like core staple goods. And so they had to meet that minimum criteria. So they couldn't just, decide tomorrow to be a liquor store or something. They have to maintain a minimum of certain types of goods in the store.
Okay. All right. We have other questions, but I don't think you've touched on these topics yet, so
Okay.
you can go back now.
I am almost done. And this is a little bit vague, but just so you all know where we're headed next, like I said, we're focused on getting that second Azalea opened at the end of the year. And we are always in the business of attracting traditional grocers. We know that they have a huge role to play in the market. And if we can convince them to come to areas, whether they're directly in our food deserts or adjacent to, we will, and we do. So we're always in conversation with those folks. We probably will do more azalea markets. We're always refining the model, but we have our eyes on potentially doing a few more in the next couple years. That early cohort of technical assistants really shined a light for us on the need to support independent grocers, and so we want to continue that work even once that TA program ended. We're exploring ways that we can do that with them better, whether that's, starting kind of informal or formal groups to support them, or providing kind of aggregate services that they can all access, things like that. Like I said at the beginning, we are always refining how we measure and track. There's more work to be done there to really know, one, what is our gap? Where can we go next? But also, how are we moving the needle with a new market or a new store that we do support? And then, of course, this is just one part of the food ecosystem. There is the production side, and the supporting of those vendors. So more areas of our city need farmers markets. We need to be leveraging more land for urban agriculture. So we have a great team that does that work as well. So that's sort of where we're headed. I will just end with kind of some lessons learned that we've done this work. I know this type of store seems really exciting and it is very exciting, but they are also a lot of work, and I want to just be transparent about that. And they are expensive. So as you and your city are starting to think about how to combat these issues, I would say one is to build a team of experts. I am the least educated on our team about food policy and food access, but I surround myself with folks that really do understand this industry. So I would encourage you to find those folks, and build a roster of people that have different expertise at the table. I would also say to really understand your local market. So, why aren't grocers going places? I mean, we get this question in every single neighborhood in our city that does not have a grocery store, and actually having the conversations with the traditional grocers is very helpful to know what they need to see. I mean, it's about density for them. It's about the area median income. And so if those are the things they need to see, how can you as a city or wherever you sit influence that? But also understanding timing. So if one area of your city maybe is a few years away from a grocery store, you may be able to just sort of use incremental things to close gaps, like pop-up markets or starting new farmers markets. But if it is a 10-year runway for that area to really be ready for a big grocer, then maybe you should explore something more permanent like a market like Azalea. Um, I want to emphasize again the idea of bolstering your existing ecosystem. So the folks like those independent grocers that are already doing the work, or those nonprofits, it's much less intensive. As I said, we gave small grants to these grocers and TA, and we gave small grants to these nonprofits, and we're able to have a huge impact and keep folks in business, versus just trying to start something new on our own. And then, as I said, we're learning things from this first phase of the Azalea markets of how we may change things in the future. You saw on that chart that we selected the operator first, and then we really refine the site selection and things like that. We'd probably flip that in the future, to be honest, of really understanding our sites and the costs associated with converting those sites before we identified a developer and do some of the legwork on their behalf. We do that with a lot of our housing projects in the city, and we found that it tends to move faster. We would also probably bring in our city teams like permitting and folks like that earlier so that they can be giving that insight to us as quickly as possible. So again, we are learning all the time, but these are some of our initial things as we embarked on this for the first 4 years. So I think that's all I had, and I will stop sharing and just answer questions.
Thank you so much. It's really maybe it's unfortunate, but it's interesting how how much we get swayed by the media because I had no idea that this is like a constellation of many strategies because we've just been hearing about the Azalea market in the news. So,
Yeah.
so I'm so glad that you presented on like all of it because it's important to understand it's just part and parcel of a much bigger approach. Okay, so let's see. We have a bunch of questions. What have you learned about operations? Well, you just mentioned a little bit about sort of that doing that pre-development work yourself,
Mhm.
and whether Azalea requires ongoing public subsidy.
Yeah. So that is certainly something we're learning. The site that is already open in downtown has actually received some additional subsidy from the first time around, and a lot of that is for some overrun of costs, but also for outreach and marketing. So we're seeing good traffic in the store. I think the thing we've learned so far is that the size of the basket, if you will, has been smaller than we maybe originally hoped. And so folks are coming in, getting a couple things, getting on their way. It's a heavy kind of commuter and
Yeah,
it's near the university. We're not seeing folks like doing their full grocery shopping there,
yeah,
partially just because of the location, but there are residents downtown, and so that is a focus of the store right now is to get that word out to more residents. And of course, they're somewhat dependent on the development of the area, so we're of course doing our part there too. But yeah, we are monitoring that. We want them to be successful, and so there has been some times where we've had to infuse a little bit more into it, but that additional capital we've supported them with was in that 6 million number, so the total is still around 6 million. The other
yeah,
store is actually coming in closer to 8 in full transparency because of the way the capital market has changed in the last year and how difficult it is to get some of this equipment in. So that's just one thing I want to be mindful of for folks as they think about this. It is expensive. We're seeing it be $6 to $8 million, and so we hope that's the end of the public subsidy, but we don't know yet. And that's why I really wanted to mention those other models because there might be ways in your community to bridge that gap that don't require that amount of
mm-hmm,
investment.
mm-hmm. Okay. Is there a workforce development and hiring component?
Yeah, so as a part of that capital stack that they received, they got a middle wage job grant as a part of that, and so they are to receive those grant funds, they had to commit to hiring and paying a middle wage. I forget the exact amount, but there's some parameters Invest Atlanta sets on that.
Okay.
Um, I don't believe there was a local hiring component, but to be honest, I can't imagine they did not hire locally. I've just based on the way they operate their stores. So
Yeah. Because they're a local operator, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, somebody asked about if the staff is union or non-union, and Georgia's an at-will state, so I assume it's, yeah, non-union. Did the city provide any additional support to help accelerate? Oh, you talked about this, the development and permitting process.
So that would be, I would say, the primary role I played. We had project managers pushing on the Invest Atlanta side, working directly with the operator to get the different pieces in motion. But that was sort of my role as the liaison at the city. And I would say that's a really important component if you're considering this, is to have someone at the city who's sort of the champion of the work who can push. It did require some greasing of the wheels at times. So yeah, that's a really important component.
Okay. Someone is asking about the job creation impact of, it says these investments, so I'm assuming they mean not just Azalea, but all of the different investments. And I know it's too early to tell, but is that even something that you all are tracking?
Yes, so I'm gonna drop if I can drop a link in the chat, I will. It's Atlanta has a food access dashboard,
Okay.
and tracking how many jobs their investments are creating.
Okay.
Um, I think I can do well, I may. Okay, everyone, yeah, here we go. Um, so check that out. It tells you what investments we've made, and how many jobs they're creating.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Daniel says we operate a small fresh food grocery in a small satellite city outside of Pittsburgh. Have you found the program requires ongoing? Okay, you talked about you hope it won't require ongoing subsidy, but you don't know yet. Related, is pricing intentionally kept affordable or is it priced competitively with nearby fully for-profit grocers?
Yeah, it's a great question. I believe they worked very closely with IGA to come up with a model for competitive pricing. And so we are finding that the prices are somewhere between. I know everyone has regional stores, so I'm trying to think of a good comparison. It's maybe not Walmart prices, but it is like
Okay.
Kroger to like a Publix or a Wegmans type pricing.
Okay.
So I forget exactly the mechanism, but IGA has a way to kind of do collective purchasing to support them so that they are not, having to price at kind of boutique levels.
Yeah. I'm gonna go to Azalea today and buy eggs because I feel like eggs are
Yeah.
always the indicator of like how comparatively affordable. I haven't
Yeah.
had a chance to go there, so I'm
Yeah.
excited. And I lived downtown for many years. I think I probably would have left anyways, but I think I would have stayed a lot longer if there was a grocery store. So hopefully the word will spread. Is the Walgreens ground lease a market rate lease, or were you able to negotiate and lease optimal to the community endeavor?
I would have to check on that. My guess would be that it's fairly market rate in both of our sites. We have not found, uh, at least on the other site, that anyone is interested in cutting a below market lease for us, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
we may explore models in the future where we do own the property outright. Obviously, that gives us more control. But this was sort of our best path to getting things up and running as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Especially because you want it to be centrally located. So,
Yeah.
yeah. But what a great idea. That was Ricky Hall. I wonder if there is any like CLT model grocery store. That would be really
Mhm.
cool.
Mm.
Okay. Kathy says, for the community food bank, I love the idea of a store model where you can pull from the shelf. Do the 1,700 families have to pre-qualify to use the market?
Yes, they do. And I don't 100% know about their qualifications. I believe it's similar to a SNAP kind of qualification or a mutual kind of an enrollment type process. But you do have to pre-qualify. But once you do, yeah, it is very much like shopping at a grocery store, and it's a much more dignified experience. And so we love that model.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, Heather says, can you better explain the slide with the catchment areas? I guess the map, is that what
Mm,
she's, does this still
yeah.
mean the half-mile radius, or is it assumed that people will travel further for access to a greater variety of goods?
Yeah, that's sort of the premise. And to be honest, we are kind of playing around with this where we haven't come up with, exactly where we want to land on it. But yeah, the premise would be that a large 7 day a week supermarket, serves a higher quantity of folks than maybe a farmer's market that's open once or twice a week, or a bodega that has smaller goods. So I need to confirm kind of where we're landing on that, but and if I'm curious if other cities are exploring this as well. But yeah, the idea would be that maybe a larger store is more accessible in that way, even if it's a little further away.
For the second store that you guys are hoping to put in the southwest part of Atlanta, is that one strategically going to be placed to for that catchment of a half-mile radius that's currently
Yes.
not
Yeah.
served?
Sort of. It's on a major
Oh,
thoroughfare in the
Campbellton. It's on
city. Yeah, it's on
Campbellton.
Campbellton Road.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's like midway on a pretty major thoroughfare between interstates. It has parking, but it also will be, it has current bus service, but it will also have a designated stop on a bus rapid transit that they're rebuilding on that corridor, or building on that corridor rather. So, um, we did try to kind of, there is no grocery store, I think, on that and maybe on that entire corridor. So it will be the only store within a couple miles either direction.
Yeah. Okay. Hanna asks, is there any intention to prioritize locally grown food or work with slash bolster urban farming projects in the city? Yeah, you talked about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, short answer is yes. And I'm not the expert on that, but if you are interested, I can connect you to our colleagues that are doing that work.
Okay. Let's see. Were the small grocers who received the technical assistance and funding providing fresh food?
I do believe they ha also had to meet that criteria, certain staple goods. And uh, yeah, I can confirm that, but I do they could not be like a gas station or something like that. They had to have a certain amount of fresh foods, meats, produce, things like that.
Okay. And I'm just curious to know, how did that TA work? Was it like they got a certain number of hours or dollars to
That's
spend
a
with?
good question. That was run through Invest Atlanta. I wasn't as involved,
Oh,
but
got it.
it,
Okay.
yeah, I think it was a year-long cohort
Oh,
of regular type
okay.
trainings and sessions and things like that.
Cohort model. Okay. Let's see. In what ways does this project encourage participation from residents accessing those stores and empower them to develop the program further? So how did you all engage residents?
Yeah, that's a great question. To be honest, in the downtown store, we certainly made them aware that it was happening. We got nothing but encouragement and positive feedback from residents that they were desperate for grocery, as you mentioned. There was really nothing downtown in that space. We did engage SCAD, the Savannah College of Art and Design, that has a campus in Atlanta to support kind of the design and how the store should feel. So these college students participated in kind of a design expo to provide options to the developers themselves, actually. Um, and then we also, so downtown didn't have as much of that. Like I said, they're actually doing a lot of that as we speak, to get more residents engaged. On the Campbellton side, we have a little bit more runway because that store won't be open until later this fall. So we're actually starting that process now. I mean, again, those residents are aware it's happening, they're excited, but we are going to be starting more aggressively to go to neighborhood meetings and get folks excited about it. Probably do some hard hat tours of the site itself, maybe do some soft opening with different kind of community groups in the area to build the muscle of this is a new store for you. And so because they're a local operator, it's a lot easier to get them involved and to also get them to adjust if things aren't working or learn what the community wants. So it has not been a situation where the store is open and we've dusted our hands and said good luck. You know, we're still communicating with the operator almost daily. So it's an we all are all equally invested in it succeeding, and so that means the community needs to be bought in.
Yeah. Speaking of the operator, I was so surprised when I found out that it was Savvy because, as you know, in other parts of the city, those Savvy stores, they're like little gourmet grocery
Yeah.
stores that have like very fancy food. But Azalea has like all of the basic produce and groceries, right? It's not like a regular Savvy. Okay. At first, I was like, that's, I don't know how much that's gonna help. Okay, let's see. Is Azalea turning a profit? Is there a profit sharing agreement with the city, community, or staff?
Yeah, so it is not turning profit yet. It typically takes groceries 2 to 3 years to turn a profit.
And remind
That
us,
was
how long
part
has it been operating?
about 6 months.
Okay, okay, yeah.
And again, it's an incredibly low margin business. So um, that was part of the public subsidy, quite frankly, is to cover that gap in operating expenses and revenue. Um, The profit sharing agreement, and I don't have it in front of me. Like I said, they are responsible for paying back some loans that were given. But my understanding is after that, that the profits would be theirs, for the term of the lease as the operator. And I didn't say this, but the city owns the IP for Azalea. And so hypothetically, if we wanted to do another one with a different operator, we could. It's not their IP.
Got it. Okay. So the other one is also going to be Azalea.
Yes, it's going to be Azalea operated by Savvy. So
Got
that
it. Okay.
RFP was for 2 stores.
Okay. Okay. Thinking about the Just Communities commitments and actions, can either Sade or Katie talk about the ways this food market model considers and or incorporates some of the Just Communities 17 operational actions? Ooh, that's a very all-encompassing and loaded question. So some of our commitments, for example, in the belonging priority area, we talk about increasing civic participation. So you kind of already talked to that. Another one of our priority areas is environment, and we have like all of these very specific indicators. That might actually be a good one to talk about. Did you guys get into like, I know you had to do some retrofitting of the Walgreens to make this work. Did you put in some energy efficiency standards or anything like that?
That's a good question. I'm assuming a lot of the appliances are new. We didn't reuse basically anything, so I'm assuming they meet some level of energy efficiency, but
Got it.
we didn't pursue any type of like building energy efficiency certification. So
Okay.
yeah.
Do you know if the city for its own properties or developments, if it has like certain um, building or sustainability standards? I wonder.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm not the expert on that. I do know those are
Yeah,
very active
yeah,
conversations at the city. I'm happy to kind of look into it a little bit and get you more info, but
yeah,
I know for a fact we've got some folks right now on our housing team looking at this of how do we make sure our housing developments that we're supporting kind of meet some basic standards around this. So, it's certainly a hot topic, no pun intended, at the city.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, Another one of the Just Communities priority areas is opportunity, which is speaking to economic opportunity. And you talked about the local hiring. That's one of our commitments that we ask communities to take. And ours, I think, is even more, is like hyper local to like the immediate area of whatever it is you're developing. But so hopefully that answers your question, Robin. Okay, let's see. What data are you using to determine access? And they're speaking to mobility, so walking, biking, transit, and are you working with public works, et cetera, to prioritize improved access?
Mm. Yeah, that's a great question. I was just on a call about sidewalks a couple days ago. So, I mean, yes, I wouldn't say we've necessarily tied it to the grocery food access space, but in general, we are always working to. I didn't really mention this, but the areas, particularly in that southwest side of Atlanta, are a part of a mayoral initiative called the Neighborhood Reinvestment Initiative. So, we've identified 7 priority kind of zones of the city that we are concentrating focus and investment in across a wide variety of interventions. So that's including food access, affordable housing, transportation, infrastructure. And so that these all of these food options right now that we have done are in those areas and probably will continue to be, quite frankly.
Yeah.
And in it, so in addition to that, we are doing a lot of other types of infrastructure investments. And the idea is that if you concentrate investment in an area and layer those different things on top of one another, you can
Yeah.
hopefully accelerate the positive impact in the community. So
Uh,
certainly doing that. I think there was another part of the question, but
uh, oh, I need to scroll back up. Oh, data.
yeah,
Data are you using?
that's a good question. Check out that dashboard I sent. I want to say they
Okay.
talk about the methodology at the bottom of the map. It's their map. So
Okay.
there's some data on or how we are calculating it currently.
Okay. Will there be future opportunities to partner with the city of Atlanta that local nonprofits uh, to acquire properties for municipal market tenants
Hmm.
or grant funds? So will there
Yeah,
be future opportunities or grant funds from the city of Atlanta?
I think the short answer is yes. I am not capacity. There's no active, applications right now for folks. We are kind of taking the $6 million initial investment has been expended. We're taking a
Yeah.
beat, seeing what worked, what didn't, and kind of putting together our priorities for term two. And so I have no doubt food access will continue to be a priority, but exactly how we structure that is still being decided.
Okay. Does Atlanta have any food co-ops, and was that a model that the city explored? Do we have any food co-ops?
I believe so. Like Seven Nanda, I think, is a
Oh,
co-op.
right. Yes.
Mhm.
And that is it's been there
Yeah,
the
forever.
80s maybe. I mean, a very long time. Yeah.
So we do, and I think we are open to exploring any types of models in the future. As I mentioned, the RFP for this was competitive, so if a co-op wanted to apply, they could have. And but in general, we do definitely support those stores. We have conversations with them when they are looking to expand or grow or to relocate. So
Yeah.
yeah, we love those kind of models.
That's a really interesting question because if you use the same model that you used for this one, for Azalea, co-ops by definition have 100
Yeah.
owners, co-owners.
Right.
So you would be negotiating with like 100 people as opposed to, but that's kind of cool. I like that idea. Um, okay, can you share the SKU count for both markets? I don't even know what that means.
I can check on that. I don't know if that's public, but I can certainly ask if they're willing to share.
And what is SKU for those of us that don't know?
I believe they're asking like how many good, like the
Oh,
market, like how many goods are they selling?
yeah, actually, on that topic, I was wondering, do you guys have a way of knowing where folks are coming from? Like if it's Georgia State students or residents or
That's a good question. I'm sure anecdotally we're kind
yeah,
of learning that. I know we are getting a good amount of students, but that's seasonal. And
yeah.
obviously the World Cup is coming, so we expect
Oh
good
yeah.
traffic from that. Based on kind of basket size, you can kind of uh, deduce that folks are maybe not, again, doing their full shopping there, so they're
Yeah.
probably commuters. But yeah, I can ask more and see if they are collecting a lot of obviously numbers data, but I don't know how they're collecting that kind of data.
Okay. We have one more question in the QA, and then I think I saw a couple in the chat. So, what has the city learned from similar initiatives in Kansas City, Missouri, and Florida that have been unsuccessful? And what is Atlanta doing differently?
That's a good question. In full transparency, I'm not as familiar with those models.
Yeah.
And when this project was being created, I was not yet on the team, so I'm not sure if they looked at
Oh,
those models
got
or not.
it. Okay.
Um, but happy to ask.
Yeah.
And I mean, we definitely hear transparently that this is really, really hard work and that a lot of these type things don't work out. We did try, I think, because we're doing things like covering operating losses, and giving the store every bit of runway it can to succeed, including partnering them with IGA so that they do have competitive pricing. I know those are some things that we learn from best practices that will make them hopefully successful in the long run.
Yeah, and in the one article that I read before we did this webinar, I read that the one in Kansas City, Missouri closed down, and they were saying in the article that their model was that it was completely city owned. And I do think that that was a lesson that Atlanta took because that makes it so much harder for the city to operate. Um, so I'm sure that somebody on the team probably talked to folks there.
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if there's stuff in the chat. Well, actually, you can probably see the chat, right? I'm looking. Oh, there's the chat. Okay. Let's see. Can we get okay, I answered that. We don't, okay. Sorry for this. Okay, sorry. This meant like I don't know what that means. I'm gonna skip that.
Yeah.
How do small footprint, high technology markets like Nourish and Bloom fit into your model and help you meet your goals if they do at
Yeah.
all?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, Nourish and Bloom is a local small grocery operator that is fully autonomous. So uh, you like download some technology to be able to like walk in, put your groceries in a thing, and just walk out. Like you don't check out, you don't interact with a person to do that work. Um, and we have supported them actually in I think two locations using not this funding, but again our TIF funding. In some areas, we've supported their capital build out. So they are certainly a part of the ecosystem. There are a lot of stores I didn't mention. We have a food recovery organization in Atlanta called Gooder that operates some
Mhm.
sites that do free and reduced goods for folks in deserts, one of which is in a school. So we've supported lots and lots of different kind of models. We don't think there's a silver bullet to food access or one right way. So we are open to all that are attempting to get at this problem.
Okay. I'm gonna take one more of these. Let's see. Are there technologies that you're aware of that help grocers operate more efficiently?
I would not know the specifics of that. I would say just generally those small grants we were able to make to independent grocers to do things like upgrade their point of sale, and upgrade their refrigerators is a huge deal for them. That allowed them to stay, because their margin's so small, they often do not have a capital budget. And so that is really impactful for them. I don't know if one specific technology moved the needle. But yeah, and I would say one of the things, just as an example, we're exploring that we do think they would be very interested in is doing things like maybe having a distribution center that they could access for some goods because again, they independent purchasing is what can drive up their costs. And so are there ways we can support them with
All
collective
in. Yeah.
purchasing,
Mhm.
or things like fractional legal support or brokerage
Mhm.
support? They often can get into some really bad lease structures because they just don't have the ability to hire quality legal representation to review those things. And so how can we do stuff like that ultimately can result in cost savings?
Okay. Um, so how can folks get in touch to ask you any questions
Yeah.
that we weren't able to cover here?
Yeah, so I will drop my email in the chat.
Okay.
I would love to hear from folks, especially in other cities that are either doing different things or are interested in some of this work. I can get the actual experts on the line if you want to go deeper on one thing or the other of how we did things. But yeah, we'd love to hear from folks.
Okay. Well, I will just close out by thanking you, Katie, so much for giving us some of your time today. Please thank all the good folks in the mayor's office. I'm really proud as an Atlantan that this is something that our city did. And I in your while you were giving your presentation, I was thinking about like Fannie Lou Hamer is one of my personal heroes, and she wasn't in the food world necessarily, but she used to say like, if you have a pig, I'm gonna mess it up, but something like, if you have a pig and grow your own food, nobody can tell you what to do.
Mm,
So I know this was like, a conversation about what government is doing and public policy and all of that is important. But for me, I feel like this is really about our freedom. And this is just another way that we get a little more freedom to make choices to take better care of ourselves, ways that we can afford to take better care of ourselves. So thank you
yes.
again. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Please come back next month.
Thanks. Great to meet you all.